If you thought things in Congress couldn't get more chaotic, you were wrong. What happened on the House floor wasn't just another political skirmish. It was a public unraveling, live, loud, and impossible to ignore. Jim Jordan thought he had the stage, the control, the momentum. But what happened next flipped the script in real time. Hakeem Jeffries didn't just respond, he dismantled Jordan. Slowly, relentlessly. And when it was over, there was no mistaking what had happened. Before we pull this moment apart, piece by piece, make sure you're subscribed. This isn't just a highlight reel, this is the full story. The kind that changes how you see the people steering this country. So hit that like button, subscribe, and let's go back to the beginning. Jim Jordan built his identity on confrontation. Raised in Troy, Ohio, he was a champion wrestler before he ever held a microphone. He knew how to fight. And when he entered politics, he brought that same tenacity to Washington. But something changed when he stopped being the outsider. Once he had power, the edge sharpened. He wasn't just pushing back against Democrats. He was launching full-scale offensives, investigations, hearings, subpoenas, all under the banner of accountability. But that banner started to fray. His targets became looser, the evidence thinner, and the people backing him? Less interested in truth than loyalty. Jordan helped found the House Freedom Caucus, a group meant to keep Republicans in check. But it quickly morphed into something else, a launchpad for the hard right. He became one of Trump's most loyal defenders, especially during the impeachment proceedings. And even after January 6th, when the Capitol lay in ruins and confidence in Congress was shattered, Jordan didn't back down. He doubled down. But power is a strange thing. It doesn't just expose your enemies. It shows the cracks in your own armor. Enter Hakeem Jeffries, a Brooklyn native, the son of a social worker and a substance abuse counselor. Grounded, deliberate, and fiercely intelligent. Before Congress, he worked as a lawyer and a clerk for a federal judge. Every word he uses is chosen. Nothing is off the cuff. That's what makes him dangerous, not because he's loud, but because he's surgical. When Nancy Pelosi stepped down, the Democratic Party needed a new face, someone who could lead through chaos without feeding it. Jeffries wasn't the loudest option. He was the most stable. And in a chamber where words are often tossed like grenades, Jeffries brought precision. So when Jordan called a hearing to investigate what he claimed was the weaponization of the federal government, Jeffries didn't flinch. He studied. He waited. And when the moment came, he unleashed everything. But this moment didn't happen in a vacuum. Tensions were already high. The 2024 election had come and gone, but the scars it left were still bleeding. Trump was facing multiple indictments. His supporters were louder than ever. And the Republican Party was fractured, torn between traditional conservatives and the MAGA hardliners who seemed determined to burn the rulebook. Jordan positioned himself as the truth seeker, the one exposing what he claimed was a coordinated effort to silence conservatives. He held press conferences, dropped subpoenas, and gave speeches warning of government overreach. But those speeches weren't rooted in fact. They were laced with innuendo, half-truths, convenient omissions. Inside the Judiciary Committee, Jordan had the gavel. But that didn't mean he had control. The hearing began with Jordan doing what he does best, attacking. He claimed federal agencies had colluded with social media companies to silence conservative voices. He painted a picture of a government turning against its own citizens. He rattled off cherry-picked examples, distorted timelines, and statements pulled so far out of context they barely resembled the truth. But then Hakeem Jeffries took the floor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He started with the facts. The actual evidence from federal reports. The court cases that had already ruled on some of these claims. He didn't dance around Jordan's accusations. He went right through them. Point by point, he took Jordan's argument and stripped it of its armor. He quoted the Constitution, not in vague terms, but with specific clauses that directly contradicted what Jordan had claimed. He reminded the room that Jordan himself had refused a subpoena during the January 6th investigation. That the same man calling for transparency had done everything in his power to avoid accountability. Then came the line that hit like a sledgehammer. You don't get to lecture anyone on patriotism while shredding the Constitution in broad daylight. The chamber fell silent. Even some Republicans shifted in their seats. Jordan tried to interrupt. Jeffries didn't stop. This committee was designed to protect the people, not to protect lies, not to chase shadows. By the time Jeffries finished, the atmosphere in the room had changed. Jordan looked smaller, not just politically, physically. The fury that usually powered him had nowhere to go. Outside that room, the world took notice. Clips of Jeffries' takedown flooded social media. Hashtags exploded. Cable news looped the exchange endlessly. Op-eds came pouring in, calling the speech everything from a lesson in leadership to the slapback of the year. But the most brutal critiques didn't come from Democrats. They came from conservatives. Some Republican strategists warned that Jordan's theatrics were backfiring, that the public was tired of smoke and mirrors, that while Jeffries spoke with clarity, Jordan had offered only noise. Inside the Republican Party, fractures deepened. Moderates whispered about losing control of the narrative. And the MAGA wing, they just got louder. But for many watching, this wasn't about Jordan's humiliation. It was about how easily misinformation can take root when no one pushes back. And what happens when someone finally does. Jeffries didn't just fact-check Jordan. He exposed the entire performance, the illusion of control, the facade of principle, and beneath it just ego and fear. Because the truth is, Jordan had built his platform on conflict. But when someone confronts him with reason instead of rage, the whole thing crumbles. This wasn't a victory lap for Democrats. It was a warning shot. We're living in a moment where lies travel faster than facts, where outrage wins airtime and reason gets drowned out. But every now and then, something cuts through the noise. A moment that doesn't just shake the headlines, but the foundation beneath them. This was one of those moments. The question now isn't what happened to Jim Jordan. It's what happens next. The people who watched that clip saw more than a debate. They saw a fight for something bigger than party lines, a defense of truth, and a rejection of the chaos that's been sold as leadership. Jordan will be back. He always is. But every time someone like Jeffries steps up, the playbook gets harder to run. The narrative becomes harder to bend. And the truth becomes harder to bury. This isn't over. Not even close. So if you're still here, you already know this story matters. Because it's not just about what happened in one chamber on one day. It's about what this country believes in and who's willing to fight for it. So stay tuned. Subscribe. Because next time, the spotlight may shift again. And when it does, we'll be ready.